The 1967 Ford Shelby Mustang GT350. The 1967 Ford Shelby Mustang GT350 is a classic, red-blooded, American muscle car. While the Mustang line was only 3 years old in 1967, this didn't stop the legendary Carroll Shelby from injecting a healthy dose of his ingenuity into the redesigned, 1967 model. These Shelby Mustangs included powerful engines, race-bred transmissions, and strong rear differentials to create the ultimate drag racers. Impressive acceleration, great looks, amazing street presence, and glorious V8 sounds were all standard equipment. Sure, this muscular pony may not be as insanely powerful as some of the cars of today, but remember that this thing is all motor. There are no electronic gadgets and gizmos or crazy forced induction systems padding its numbers. It truly is a fine example of classic mechanical engineering at its finest. Click past the jump to read more about the 1967 Ford Shelby Mustang GT350. Exterior. The 1967 redesign made for a heavier Mustang, along with a longer, fiberglass hood, and new front and rear fascias. You can still see the design of the original 1964.5 version, but these styling upgrades gave the car a more aggressive appearance. The use of chrome on this car was very nicely integrated, with a chrome lower bumper and chrome exhaust tips. It worked out well, as the Shelby Mustang GT350 looked intimidating and ready to rock. The separate high-beam headlamps on the edges of the grille added more character, while a thin, chrome front bumper sat below a mesh grille with the classic Shelby GT350 logo in place. Also, a fairly dramatic hood scoop up front hinted at the power lurking underneath. I doubt drivers of this classic waited long for slowpokes to get out of the fast lane. Out back, the Shelby included new, horizontal taillights and a spoiler. Also, functional rear brake cooling scoops adorned the rear quarter panels. Chrome was very nicely integrated on the GT350, with a lower bumper and exhaust tips slathered in the shiny stuff. Overall, it was a nice-looking rear end that echoed the muscular treatment up front quite nicely. 10-spoke 15-inch cast iron rims were the wheel choice with Goodyear white-lettered radials. There's just something about white-lettered tires on cars like this that look amazing. Ditto the eye-catching racing stripe. Interior. The GT350 had a rather nice interior for its time. Don't expect any modern conveniences, but the GT350 was available with air conditioning and an AM/FM radio. It's easy to see why Ford chose to bring these retro gauges back with the 2005 Mustang redesign. While the features list may not blow you away, the design itself was great. The steering wheel was a gorgeous, wood-rimmed and satin-trimmed design with the classic Shelby logo in the center. Steering wheels like this remind me of how nice they could be before the first, horrible airbag-designed wheels came along. Behind this wheel was a very classy-looking set of gauges. A 140 mph speedometer and a whopping 8,000 rpm tachometer were joined with smaller analog clock, fuel level, water temperature, and oil pressure gauges. It's easy to see why Ford chose to bring these retro gauges back with the 2005 Mustang redesign. Retro-looking gauges have also oozed into comparable Dodges and Chevrolets as well. Long, horizontal metal trim covered most of the dash and the front door trim. Comfy, vinyl bucket seats rounded out the package. All in all, not a bad place to spend time. Drivetrain and chassis. The GT350 came with an iron block, 289 cubic inch 4.7-liter V8 rated at 306 horsepower and 329 foot-pounds of torque. For a pushrod design, this motor revved relatively high, with the horsepower peak not in full swing until the 6,000 rpm redline. Also, torque didn't peak until a similarly high 4,200 revolutions per minute. Regardless, it worked just fine. It is also worth mentioning that the Ford Windsor V8 design was used in Ford vehicles for the remainder of the 20th century. Venerable it was, for sure. While those numbers may not get your pulse into overdrive, this was very, very fast for nearly 50 years ago. Of course, 1967 was well before modern fuel injection came about, and this motor used a single Holley 4-barrel carburetor. The true dual exhaust with H-shaped crossover system came standard with Flowmasters and chrome exhaust tips. Power was routed to the ground through a sturdy, 4-speed manual transmission with a single, dry disc clutch. A 3-speed automatic was made available as an option. Rear-end ratios were 3.89 to 1 for the 4-speed manual and 3.50 to 1 for the automatic. Acceleration was impressive, with a 0 to 60 time of around 7 seconds and a top speed of 140 miles per hour. While those numbers may not get your pulse into overdrive, this was very, very fast for its time. I've never heard one of these beasts in action before, and I can't even begin to imagine how great it must have sounded while making these numbers. Braking duties were handled by 11.3-inch discs up front and drums in the rear. Power assist was standard. The front suspension consisted of unequal length control arms, coil springs, adjustable tube arms, and an anti-sway bar. Out back was a live axle, with multi-leaf, semi-elliptical springs and tube shocks. The steering was a power-assisted, rack and pinion design. 1967 Ford Shelby Mustang GT350, drivetrain specification. Prices. The 1967 Shelby Mustang GT350 was priced at $3,995, converted into $2014, that's only around $28,500, seeing as a loaded-out current Mustang can crest $40 grand, that was quite a bargain for back in the day. However, restored versions of this classic car routinely sell for over $100,000. In fact, the beautiful white example we have here is currently, as of July 25, 2014, for sale by RK Motors for $139,900. Competition: 1967 Chevrolet Camaro. Even as babies, the Mustang and Camaro came out fighting. However, Ford had the clear head start. The 1967 Chevy Camaro, like the Mustang, was available in both coupe and convertible variants. Based on GM's F-body platform, it offered a slew of engine choices ranging from a 3.8-liter inline-6 all the way to a whopping big block, 7.0-liter V8. Performance was slightly behind the GT350. A classic Motor Trend road test lists a 67 Camaro with a 5.7-liter V8 taking 8 seconds to hit 60 miles per hour, a full second slower than the Shelby Mustang. With this engine variant, horsepower was slightly lower at 295, while torque was higher at 380 pound-feet. Pricing, however, was significantly cheaper. This Camaro's test price was only $2,572, a very significant difference. The Mustang still handily outsold it, however. 1970 Dodge Challenger. The Challenger was a little late to the game, not appearing until 1969 as a 1970 model. It came in with a bang, though, offering a 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 as an option, which handily led the class with 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque. Other, less powerful V8 versions were available as well, with the base engine being a 3.7-liter slant 6. Performance was stout, with even the mid-level 383 RT pulling a 14.3-second quarter-mile time with a 99 miles per hour trap speed. The Big Daddy 426 Hemi model could do the deed in an eye-opening 13.2 seconds at 108 miles per hour. Pricing started at $2,851 but could quickly approach the GT350's $3,995 price tag with upgrades. Conclusion. The Shelby Mustang GT350 was an amazing piece of machinery. Combining great looks with great performance, special little touches, and with Carroll Shelby's DNA baked right in, it's no wonder this car was such a smashing success. I must admit that old-school muscle cars are not the first type of cars I lust after. It's not that I don't like them, it's just that I'm more interested in today's freshest designs. However, after reporting on all of the facts, and seeing all of these stunning photos up close, I have definitely become more of a follower. I can clearly see why an enthusiast would shell out well over $100,000 to put one of these beauties in their garage. Love it muscle car styling and sounds excellent performance attractive interior. Leave it limited features poor fuel economy not a great handler by today's standards.
If you liked this video, please share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.